and an era comes to a close. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is James and today I'm going to be giving you the final DCEU ranking of all the movies starting from 2013 when Man of Steel released all the way up until now, 2023, when Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom released. So if you didn't know, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom just released on December 22nd, 2023 on Friday, and it is absolutely bombing at the box office, and it is the final film in the DCEU, where it is a 10-year-long universe, and then in 2 years from now, James Gunn is going to reboot the DC universe with Superman Legacy. And this has been a very interesting universe where it started out as with a lot of promise of bringing these characters together, something that can maybe rival Marvel while also being a bit something different. And it was very clear over the years that just didn't work out and that they've made a lot of big mistakes. This video might be a little longer than usual, simply because I do want to take this time to reflect over how this universe went and all my thoughts and the backstories to a lot of these movies, so bear with me. But let me know your ranking of all the movies, and if you want to include Peacemaker down below in the comments section. I suspect that a lot of these we're going to agree on, a lot of them we're going to heavily disagree on, but that's just our opinions. Be kind, and let's get started. So in last place is Justice League, or Justice League 2017. This movie, to me, is an abomination. If you just look at it as a superhero movie and you don't know anything about the actual drama behind it, it's still a pretty bad, pretty terrible comic book movie with a couple positives, but really it's not a good movie at all. It's horribly paced. It's got really bad dialogue. It's kind of unfathomable in certain scenes. It's got some of the worst CGI in a comic book movie ever, and especially that it cost $300 million. It's weird that it looks so bad, but none of those reasons are why I hate the movie. The reason why is because, if you don't know, over the years, after Batman vs. Superman and Man of Steel were not as well received, Warner Brothers wanted to take Zack Snyder's control away from him and move in a more lighthearted tone and basically kind of dismantle his vision of a darker, more serious, more character-driven story for this universe, and especially for Superman. And so that already irks me when you've got a film that... I don't like it when auteurs and visionaries get their visions taken away from them over time. It just feels very scummy. But then even from there, Zack Snyder's daughter in 2017, I'm pretty sure, passed away. She by suicide. And so he left the project, and they used that opportunity to completely change the film, to make it a more lighthearted tone, make it more like the Avengers, and change everything. And so because of that, they brought in Joss Whedon, who did the first two Avengers movies, which is like their Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon styles don't mash at all. And then they mandated that it must be below 2 hours long, so it's literally an hour and 59 minutes and an hour and 59 seconds. It's rushed through the entire film, and so the entire film just has this really bad stink on it, where you just feel like something's off. Like, you don't feel good watching it. You don't feel like it's a director's vision. It feels like a film put together by committee. There are a couple flares of Snyder in there, but it really does feel like it's just put together by committee. And once you figure out everything that happened before it was released, and how a bunch of executives basically would not delay the film, because if they delayed it, they wouldn't get their bonuses. The entire film is really gross to me. I hate it. It's a movie where I'll never watch it again. It is sadly not easily, but it is one of the worst comic book movies of all time. And to me, it's one of the most disgraceful movies put out, just because of what happened behind the scenes. So there are other movies that are maybe worse than it, but just for all those reasons, it comes in at the bottom. At number 15 is Suicide Squad from 2016. This was a movie that I was very excited for, and once again, what a letdown. This was in the era of DC where it was kind of just like, felt like they were just they got really cold feet all the time, where this film was directed by David Ayer, and apparently he only had like 6 weeks to write the script, which, if you don't know, it usually takes like 3 to 4 months to write the first draft of something, and then a little bit longer to get the final draft out. So 6 weeks, and they hired him to do this, and he shot a more soulful and character-driven, a little bit darker take on the Suicide Squad that apparently was a little bit longer and had a much different ending. Joker was apparently the main villain of the film. Enchantress wasn't in it very much. And basically, Warner Brothers got cold feet where all the hype was building, and then Batman vs. Superman came out, and they thought it was going to be received very well. Didn't make anywhere near as much money as they were hoping, and it was criticized for being dark. It was criticized, it got really bad reviews, and it was a dark movie. And then a month previous, Deadpool, rated R comedy, comes out, makes tons of money, makes almost $800 million. It's comedy. So they hired the trailer company that edited the trailer to not necessarily reshoot, but recut the entire film, make it more like fun, and it's a mess because of that. You have character development built on just pop music, and it has no characters that are like interesting. I like Harley Quinn. I like Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. I think Will Smith as Deadshot is pretty good, but those are the only two, and they still, I don't think, get much development. The Joker is completely wasted in this film. He should have been the main villain. And his relationship with Harley Quinn, once again, completely wasted. The entire movie feels like it's kind of just, once again, pieced together by a studio. It doesn't feel like a director's vision. It feels like a committee directed it, where, like, even though I think that I really want to see the Ayer cut, I still think that the film's going to have inherent flaws because he didn't have much time to develop the story. They announced a release date for the film before they even had a script or an idea of what it was going to be about. And so it's just all these things where it was, once again, Warner Brothers getting too ahead of themselves and all that. But if you just look at the movie itself, it's a pretty terrible movie. I don't like any of the characters. They're all pretty unlikable, or they have nothing to stand out. The makeup isn't fantastic. It won an Oscar. But apart from that, the visual effects I don't think are very good. All the action feels like it's very choppy. And there's certain scenes where it feels like it's supposed to be rated R, but they just cut it down, or a little bit darker. I think that once again, it's just kind of put together. There's certain things that happen that just make no sense, where they save Amanda Waller and then she gets captured literally 5 minutes later. I think that just everything involving, like, the story and the villain where Enchantress is just completely forgettable. Cara Delevingne, I think that she is a little bit of an underrated actress. I do like her, but she's really not great in this movie. This is a film that, once again, proved that from the beginning, the DCEU was off to a rough start. And to me, even without all the behind-the-scenes issues, this would still be probably at this spot. So at number 15 is Suicide Squad. At number 14 is maybe the biggest disappointment of the DCEU, and that's Wonder Woman 1984. As you'll see later in the list, I love the original Wonder Woman. It's one of my favorite comic book movies and DC movies of all time. And so I was really excited for this movie. It was originally supposed to release in like June of 2020. And I loved all the trailers. And this one was given a very much so a dirty hand, where it was put at the end of December 25th of 2020. So in the middle of the pandemic, when movies weren't doing anywhere near as well, they also put it directly on streaming on the same day, trying to boost their subscribers in HBO Max. And the film bombed. It made a fraction of what the original made. It made $166 million worldwide. It lost the studio like $200 or more million. And it was just a film that was very poorly handled by the studio and how it was released. But if you're just talking about the movie, I once again think that this movie is not very good. It's a significant jump from Suicide Squad and Justice League, but it's not good. I think getting the positives out of the way, Gal Gadot is still great in the role. I think that her chemistry with Steve Trevor is really good. There's a couple action scenes in that are pretty good in here, especially the one on like the highway. That's fun. And there are certain ideas in here that I like. But the film to me is a mess. Number one, it's too long. It's 2.5 hours. And this movie should have been 2 hours long. The first half hour, there's almost nothing that happens. And I'd go as far as saying the first hour, it's pretty pointless, where you're just kind of, stuff is just happening. There's not really a plot. It's just her kind of hanging out with Steve and Maxwell Lord kind of doing like mischievous stuff behind the scenes. And it's just a movie where there's a lot of ambition, but not a lot of great execution, where they shoot like this, like I think that bringing Steve Trevor back is a mistake, because you kind of, it doesn't make much sense. I mean, it's like, okay, so you bring him back and put in this guy's body, and she's basically taking advantage of this guy's body, which is kind of weird. But then the entire thing of like, to get it back, or to get her powers back, she has to let go of what she loves most. Like what they should have done was something with Mascara, where maybe her aunt can come back, and like she has to let her go. I would have liked to see them two teaming up and fighting Cheetah and Maxwell Lord. That would have been cool. Speaking of the villains and Cheetah, I think that the CGI in this movie is terrible, or for most of it at least. It's a film where it just doesn't really feel like it wasn't working right, especially Cheetah. Like, she doesn't really feel used right in this movie. And then once again, the story feels like it's kind of just put together. There's not an action scene until like an hour and a half into the movie, and then it kind of just rushes through plot lines. They randomly attack the presidency, and that just happens, and then they move on. It's a movie that is a mess of a film. It isn't just unwatchable, but it is incredibly disappointing. And it kind of was, it coming off the first one, it was a huge disappointment. I get that Patty Jenkins kind of wanted to like respect old superhero movies like the Richard Donner Superman films, but I didn't like it, and it's my number 14. And at number 13 is the new kid on the block and the final DCEU movie, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Now, this film will admittedly always have a bit of a stain on it, because it is going to be known as the last film in the DCEU. I think that the entire scenario of how they announced this new DC Universe from James Gunn was poorly handled, and where they should have made all these movies, let them come out and then announce it, or announce it and then reshuffle the release schedule so you have the Flash finishing this universe. But anyways, I think that it was poorly done, and it makes sense why all these movies in this movie is also going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars. It only opened to $28 million over the 3-day weekend, which is only $3 million more than Blue Beetle. To put that in perspective, the first Aquaman movie is the biggest DC movie, not DCEU, DC movie ever made. And so it's shocking to see how much of a fall from grace this film is. But getting to the film itself, I really like King Orm and Aquaman's relationship. I think that they have great chemistry. I really like the visual effects in the film. It's got a fun energy for most of it, and then it's got some fun globetrotting. I really like a lot of the visual effects, and the action scenes are all fun. All the action scenes are a lot of fun, and James Wan just likes to bring fun to his films. For the first 2/3 of this movie, I was hovering around a 3.75 out of 5. I was like, I might prefer this to the original. And then the last act hit, where there's a certain plot line of the kind of overall goal of Black Manta gets kicked in, and to me, it just went off a cliff, where there's just plot contrivances, there's some major logic issues, there's major questions that aren't answered. For a little bit there, it goes into major exposition mode. They introduce a new villain that we've barely mentioned, that is now the main focus of the film, that we've got to defeat. Black Manta loses all of his intrigue. You get and then you've just got some major questions of okay, so if you need to do this, then why did we set this up for the entire first 2 acts of the film? And then they do a weird like slow motion thing in the third act where it has like this really like odd slow motion where it's like shuddery stuff, and it hurt my eyes. The third act feels extremely rushed, where you've got scenes of just massive battles that feels like this would be meant to be like a 20-minute, 30-minute battle, and it's just cut down and there's no conflict. They introduce this big bad of who he's the real big bad, and he's defeated literally within 30 seconds of him being introduced. Black Manta once again loses all of his intrigue, and it goes off a cliff. It was a movie where I was really liking it, but after that third act, I walk out saying, I don't like this movie. It is one of the biggest drops from quality to, like, not quality I've ever seen in a film. It was really weird. And apparently this film was reworked a lot. It went through 3 rounds of reshoots. The reported budget is 215. I call bullshit. I suspect it's going to be around more like 300 or 250. And you can tell. I mean, it's like, it feels like they didn't have a proper story. It certainly feels like they didn't know where they were going. And once again, they should have put this in like summer or August, then put the Flash in this time. That way you can actually have a close to this universe. And so it's really unfortunate that this film was the film that closed it out, and it just went out on such a whimper, because there are 2 other movies that they should have released at the end of the year that could have ended this universe on quite a nice note. But overall, I was hoping that after the reviews came out and they weren't very good, I was hoping I could be that one person saying, you know what, I actually really like this movie. I don't know what you guys are talking about, but it looks like I'm in the main camp of everyone else. This isn't a good movie, and it sucks that this universe ended on this film. At number 12 is Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Now, from here on up, I at least enjoy most of these movies, and to be honest with you, from here until the next 2, they're fine. They're not great, but they're not bad. So Shazam! Fury of the Gods was the first DC movie released this year, and what a way to start the year of making what the Batman from 2022 made in its opening weekend, but this film made that in its entire theatrical run. This film absolutely crashed and burned in theaters. It made 133 million worldwide. The Batman made 134 million domestically in its first 3 days, which is shocking. That once again they completely mistimed when they should have announced the universe change. And yeah, it sucks that this film kind of bombed like it did, but just getting to the movie, it's fun. I mean, if you like superheroes flying around punching each other, it's fun. This is a movie where there's not too many great things about it, but there's not too many really bad things. I think that the story, once again, isn't great, but it's fine. I think that Billy, he's once again, Zachary Levi is a lot of fun. His image has been kind of ruined a bit in the last year with all the comments he's made about DC and James Gunn's universe and John Wick of all things, but whatever. This is a fine movie. It's like a 3.25 out of 5. If I were to have someone say, hey, can we watch this movie? I'd say, okay. I'd probably look at my phone a little bit, but it's fine. Like, I thought that Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu were fun in the roles of the villains. They're completely wasted, but they're fun. I like the dragon. Like, this is out of all these movies, it's the most take it or leave it. Like, I don't really know what to say about it. It's very much in the middle of the road. It's fine. And so it ends up at number 12. Definitely not the worst thing in this universe. Definitely not the best. At number 11 is Aquaman. Once again, I like this movie. This is a film that was released back in December of 2018. And I remember this film just hearing every week about how much money it was making, to the point where it eventually made $1.1 billion, the biggest DC movie of all time. And in some ways I understand about that, but in a lot of ways I don't. And on one hand, I understand that it's a film that can almost everyone can watch it. It's got a lot of kid value to it, where it's got goofy humor, it's weird. But it's also, everyone can go see it. On the other hand, it's nowhere near the best DC movie out there. It's very much a middle-of-the-road film. But speaking of just the film itself, I like it. It's like in between like a 3.25 out of 5 and a 3.5 out of 5. It's okay. It's very clear that this is directorial vision. It feels like a James Wan kind of film. It feels like he definitely put his spin on it, especially from like Furious 7 and Malignant, which you should watch. Malignant, it's pretty good. But anyway, I really like Jason Momoa as Arthur Curry. I think he's great. I think that Patrick Wilson was one of the best villains in DCEU. We don't have many to pick from, but I think he was great as the villain, and I'd like to see him do more. I would have liked to see his character go on. He was the most interesting character in this kind of mini sub-franchise, where he was the best character in Aquaman and Lost Kingdom as well, where he actually had kind of a full arc, or the beginning of an arc. Also, all the action is great. It's shot on wide shots and wide angles, so you can see everything that's happening. The visual effects are pretty stunning, and I like a lot of the horror elements of like the trench coming in, and like it's the trench and that whole horror scene, and there's like some pretty cool chases. There's a lot of horror elements, but to me, the story here really fumbles it, and there's a lot of weird elements where there's a lot of just very goofy humor that doesn't work for me, like them eating flowers, and then like that just doesn't make much sense. And then Pitbull randomly playing when they entered the desert or whatever, that makes no sense to me. I also think that the story isn't great, where this is a common complaint that I have nowadays, where it's a movie that is too long in certain sections and too short in others. For the first hour and 40 minutes, hour and 30, it really feels too long. Like, it was just like, Jesus, like, how can we hurry this up, please? And then towards the like third act, when you finally discover that his mom's still alive, it feels like it's just rolling through it. Like, and it's hard, it's just like, what the hell is going on? And, you know, it's a fun third act, but it feels rushed. And it kind of just ends. It's a movie where I like it. I think the story's a bit of a mess. I don't think that there's certain things that work. And there's also weird bits of like just way over the top violence, like that fight scene between him and Black Manta. Like, I mean, he's getting caught up in that scene. I remember seeing it in theaters and being like, wow, that's shocking, like how violent it is. And then there's like a scene where Black Manta pulls out a sword and slashes his back, and there's like a massive blood spurt that comes out, and there's like blood on his back. He's like, whoa, isn't this like a kid's movie? And so it's a little jarring. I would have liked to see more of the trench and kind of the political idea of these kingdoms, but I like it. It's good. So number 11. At number 10 is Shazam. I really like this movie. I would say buy it. It's a 3.75 out of 5. This was when they kind of started really trying to go more for the MCU version of it, and I think that they mostly succeed with this film. The thing that really makes this film stand out is it's a film about family and about finding who you really are, where Billy Batson is an interesting character, where he's been abandoned by his mother, but he really wants to find her, and so he's spent most of his life looking for her, and through all these trials and tribulations, he doesn't realize that his real family is right in front of him. And so that's kind of what makes this film stand out. And so it's a movie that really stands out because of that element, because of the family element. You actually care about the family. I also like that it's a little smaller scale. It's only made on a $100 million budget, and that was probably smart. If they made it for any more, it would have flopped. And so that's what makes it stand out. Zachary Levi's great as Shazam. He absolutely was someone that I kind of wish we could have seen continue, but it's fine. And Dr. Sivana's an okay villain, but he's also kind of like an odd villain. He's okay. I think the visual effects, once again, are pretty good. And unlike most of the movies I've already stated, the story's pretty good here, where it feels like it's got a good 3-act structure and all that. The main problem with this movie is it's got some very jarring tonal shifts, where you go from comedy and them joking about like going to like strip clubs and stuff to demons eating people's heads. And it's the most like, what the hell? And obviously David S. Sandberg directed Lights Out, and it makes sense that like he comes from horror roots, but it is very jarring. And so it's kind of shocking when that stuff happens. And then from there, I do think that this film just doesn't age well. It's not like anything gets bad as on rewatch. It's just I watch it and I'm like, that stands out. I really like that movie, and then I kind of move on. But it's a good movie. I really like it. I have fun with this movie. So number 10, Shazam. Number 9 is Black Adam. Now, this was a movie that was released in 2022, and it was kind of meant to be what everyone was saying was kind of like the revamp and the kind of resurrection of this universe, where The Rock was going to come in and he was going to resurrect this universe, and he was going to be the figurehead of this universe, and he's going to bring it back, and he's going to bring back Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck's Batman, and he's going to build towards this massive event of Black Adam versus Superman, and he's going to be the figurehead of this universe. And for two or 3 years, he said the hierarchy of power is going to change in DCEU, and it certainly did, because James Gunn kicked him out. I don't know. This movie gets a lot of hate. I really like it. To me, this is a 4-star movie. Is it generic in some parts? Yes. Does it feel like a lot of movies from the 2000s? Yes. But I like that. I really do. I like Dwayne Johnson in the role of Black Adam. I actually think that brings some good emotion to it. I love the visual effects. It's awesome. It's got some great like extended action sequences. I like the story, kind of. It's not very heavy on story, but from what we do, I do like it. I really like the JSA. Pierce Brosnan is great as Dr. Fate. I really hope he comes back. The guy that played Hawkman, Alice Hodge or whatever, that plays Hawkman, I really want him to come back in the DCU. He's great. The entire JSA is great. I like how this film is just a fun film. It's got great visual effects. Third act's not great. Villain, terrible. Can't even... Sabak, I think is his name. Not good at all. And this film ultimately does have a bit of a stain on it, where The Rock built up so much hype for months, basically just hinting, but never fully admitting that Henry Cavill's coming back. And then I remember opening night going and seeing it and seeing Henry Cavill come back, and the entire theater going wild that he's back, he's coming back, like, we're gonna do this, he's actually... And then weeks later we got like an announcement of like he's getting his own sequel, and then he was leaving The Witcher, so it seemed like we were going to be getting it. I was saying we were probably going to be getting it in like 2025, mid-2025, maybe late 2024. Super excited. And then James Gunn came along and canceled it. And so this is a movie where it's a little disappointing because it promised so much that we never got. But I still like it. Is it generic in some ways? Yes. Is there some bad writing? Yes. Does it have a great story? No. It's very simple. Is the villain not great? Absolutely. But I have fun with it. And kicking off the top half is Blue Beetle. This is one of the bigger casualties of this universe because I would have liked to see a trilogy come of this. I don't know how they're going to use him in the DCU, James Gunn, because James Gunn has confirmed that Xolo Maridueña will appear as Blue Beetle in the new DCU, and I really like that he's going to, because I think he's great in the role. And it feels like ever since this movie was announced, it feels like everyone knew this movie was going to bomb. It was originally set for HBO Max, and they thought it was really good, so they moved it up. And I think I agree with that. I give it a 4 out of 5. Once again, in the same ways as Black Adam, this movie is generic in a lot of ways, but the thing that makes it stand out, like Shazam, is the family element, where they're not just there, and they're not just fun, they're actually a part of the movie. They're getting in on the action, and they don't have any superpowers. George Lopez is awesome. There's a lot of really great emotion in this film. I love the action. It's really well done. The CGI in the trailers was god-awful, but in the movie, I actually think it looks pretty good. And so this is one of the bigger casualties where I would have really liked to see this version of it come back, where I'm worried that in the new DCU that the family won't come back, and that's part of what made Xolo's character, Jaime Reyes, so interesting. I love Blue Beetle. I was championing this movie. I was really excited for it until the trailers, and then I got a little iffy, but I'm glad I came around on it. He's one of my favorite DC characters. I love him to death. And so... yeah, I'm really happy that he's getting to continue, and it's really unfortunate that this film bombed as much as it did. At number 7 is Birds of Prey. This is a movie that I really like. From here on up, we're in the area of, I think that these movies are great from Black Adam on. This movie feels kind of like a Guy Ritchie movie where there's a lot of non-linear storytelling. There's an unreliable narrator and main character. I really like Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. I think that she does a really great job in the role. I think that she has good chemistry with all the other cast members. I really like her in this movie. I think she's great. From there, I think the action in this movie is pretty kick-ass. They hired some of the John Wick guys to do some of the action, which makes sense. That like police fight or whatever in the police station is pretty cool. And I like that it kind of had the balls to go R, where it's a grounded movie. I don't think it cost $100 million, but it's grounded, and because of that, you don't have all these otherworldly threats. It's just a bottle story of Harley Quinn going and fighting bad guys. And I really like this movie. There's not much else to say. I don't really get why everyone else hates it, but I've always borderline loved this movie. I think it's great, and I don't know. I don't get why people hate it. So, number 7. Sorry. At number 6 is Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, the Ultimate Cut. Now, if we're talking about the original cut, that'll be number 14. That movie I do not like at all, and I haven't seen it since theaters. The Ultimate Cut I think is pretty great. This is a movie where they announced it after Man of Steel came out, and at 2013 Comic-Con, and it was this massively hyped event of this is going to be Batman versus Superman. And when the movie came out, it did not do anywhere near as they were hoping. They didn't test the movie because they had so much faith in it. So when it didn't do very well critically, the box office kind of went down, and that makes sense. But 3 years later, 2019, they released the Ultimate Cut, and I really like this cut. It's still flawed. I still think that's convoluted as all hell, but I think it's a really nice middle chapter to Zack Snyder's Superman Justice League trilogy, where it really sets up, it continues everything that continues with Superman is done great, and everything that sets up for Justice League is done decently well. Main problem, I think that the action in this movie is great. The warehouse fight scene is the best Batman fight scene ever. Ben Affleck is an absolute beast in this movie. I love the fights in this film. Henry Cavill as Superman is great. He's trying to do the right thing, but no one believes him, and he's made out to be this horrible person. And I like that kind of arc of he has to like sacrifice himself, and then in some ways Lex Luthor wins, but also loses. I like how Batman this kind of starts his arc that is eventually finished in the Snyder Cut. This is a film that I really like. It is convoluted in times where it doesn't make much sense, especially if you do watch the shorter cut where it just makes no sense. Why are they burning bodies in like the Middle East? Why are they drawing Superman out there? Why are they doing all this stuff? Why are they looking for this kryptonite? How did they find this kryptonite? A bunch of it doesn't make sense, but with a 3-hour cut, it certainly does, and it's even more baffling why they cut all that. I think that this is a great film. I'm not with some of the Snyder fans that think this is a masterpiece, but it's a great movie. I also really don't like Lex Luthor. He's Jesse Eisenberg, nothing but love for the guy, but I don't like him in this movie. So I like this film, and I think it's a really good middle chapter to this trilogy of Superman Justice League films. And speaking of Snyder, at number 5 is Man of Steel. This is a film that has really grown on me. When I first saw it, I didn't really like it, and that seems like the common conception that most people had. Where they first saw it, it was a little too out there for them. They didn't like it. But as the years have gone on, I've slowly started to respect it more and more. And I personally now love this movie. It's 4.5 out of 5 for me. I love it. It's a movie where it tells a great story about Clark, once again, trying to figure out who he is in a world that has never seen anything like this. And I love all the messaging about it, of how if someone like this were to come down, the entire world would change. I love everything with Pa Kent and the Kent Farm. And then General Zod, to me, is the best villain in the DCEU by far. He's absolutely great. I absolutely love him in this film. And I've always said I really wish that they did like a Fall of Krypton movie between Russell Crowe, the conflict between Russell Crowe and guy from Nocturnal Animals, whatever his name is, Michael Shannon. I really wish we got that. And this movie's got some great action, great character piece, great acting. The visual effects are stunning in this film. The third act is awesome. It's just action and like chaos for the entire film, and it shows what would really happen if two godlike beings started fighting in the city. I love this movie. This could be higher, but I do think, once again, it's got the problem of too long in certain parts, too short in others. I really think that they should have added a bit of time onto the first hour of the Kent stuff, and I would have liked to have seen the build up to Zod a bit more, of that threat of who really is this guy built up a bit more. And then the final battle is too long. It's about an hour long, and it feels way too long. So I think that it's an hour long, and they should have made it like 40 to 50 minutes, probably like 45 minutes long. But apart from that, I love this movie, and I don't get why it still gets so much hate. At number 4 is James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. This is a great version of The Suicide Squad. This is what I wanted, where it's got the flavors of the version that we got, but it's done much better, where it still has heart, it's still dark, it's still violent as all hell, where within the first 10 minutes, over half of our cast is killed off. Like Pete Davidson just gets his head fucking blown off, and it's awesome. And this film is a great movie. This film suffered from the 2021 HBO Max thing, where they put all their movies on HBO Max and theaters on the same day. It suffered because of that, and it was released in the pandemic, and it was basically a quasi-sequel to the original. And so that it was never helped by that. But I love this film. This film is a great character. It's about character. It's about Harley Quinn. It's about where, once again, she gets kind of a full arc from the first Suicide Squad, of her being attached to the Joker. It's Birds of Prey, where she still kind of is trying to detach herself, but she doesn't really know how to. And in this film, she's her own person. She finds love, and she finds friends. King Shark, one of the best characters in DCEU. Peacemaker, great. And the thing that James Gunn does really well is making just weird characters lovable, where they're broken characters, but you're able to find the good in them. And they're inherently doing terrible things. They've done terrible things. They do terrible things. They're horrible people. They're horrible creatures. But there's something so lovable about them. Peacemaker, one of the best characters in DCU. I love John Cena in that role. And it's a movie that has full arcs for almost everyone. The fact that he made me care about Polka Dot Man is incredible. I love this movie. It did everything that the first Suicide Squad did, and talk about an improvement. Number 4, The Suicide Squad. Now we get into the top 3, and my third favorite movie of DCU is The Flash. Put your guns down. I love this movie. I don't get any of the hate that this film gets, and it feels like it's a film that just gets hate because of the CGI. Every person I've talked to that has actually seen the movie, doesn't just say they've seen it, that's actually seen the movie, says they at least like it. This is a movie that was hyped for months as one of the greatest comic movies of all time. I saw it back in April, absolutely loved it. It's one of my favorite DCEU movies. It's a great DC film. I said in my review, it reminded me why I like DC movies and why I like comic book movies. And then it just became a punching bag where all the Ezra Miller stuff came back up in back people's minds. The CGI got out there that it's really bad, and I will admit it is terrible CGI. And then a lot of people were upset by the ending, and that Zod wasn't in it more, and that's all the reasons why I love it. But basically, people just, every time I talked to someone that hadn't seen it, or even that had seen it, people that hadn't seen it said, "Oh, it sucks." Well, you haven't seen it yet. And even people that had seen it, I asked them why, and they just said, the plot. The plot is the best plot in the DCU, in my opinion, of this guy that just wants more time with it, one more day with his mom. And because of that, he has to sacrifices everything, and then he has to kill an entire world to make sure that the universe is safe. And that is fascinating to me. And so I've never gotten the hope for this film. I really like the criminal, Ezra Miller, as this character and this portrayal. I know he's done some very bad stuff, but I like what he did with this film. I love Michael Keaton coming back. I got a lot of nostalgia. Loved Sasha Kaye. And I love that this movie had balls by the end of it of, we're going to kill off Michael Keaton. We're going to do this thing of no one wins, where you can't win. There's no way you can win, and you have to make the hard choice. And I think it asks a lot of really good questions of, would you be willing to do that? And it sets up that kind of villain arc really well. Obviously, there's some execution issues. It feels like the third act is a little bit rushed, especially that last 10 minutes, a little bit rushed, and CGI is garbage. But I love this movie. I've never gotten the hate for it, and so it's my third favorite DCU movie. My runner-up was my favorite movie in the DCEU for about 4 years. That's Wonder Woman. I love this movie. This is the movie that saved the DCEU for a little bit there. It was a film that a lot of people weren't very excited for. Then it came out and kind of reignited everyone's faith. It made $800 million. No one expected it to make that much. If you had asked me back in 2017, I would have said max this film makes 600, probably more 500 or 450. And it was a great film. I saw this film 4 times in the theaters. It's a great piece about character and what it means to love. I think that Gal Gadot, I love her in the role of Wonder Woman. I wish that she would come back for the next one, but I guess not. The relationship between Steve Trevor and her is great, and I like that how they made her kind of modern. She's an odd character in the comics, but they ground her by putting her in World War One, where she kind of acts as, in some ways, this messiah to a lot of these people, this savior that came along, and she is very naive, but she's so likable. I love her relationship with Steve, how she's trying to convince Steve this whole time that Ares is real, and he doesn't believe her, but he's also not willing to tell her that he doesn't believe her because he loves her. I love that relationship, and when he dies, it's just one of the most heartbreaking things, and especially when you figure out what he told her, and everything that they went through together, and what the ultimate lesson that she learned is, it's not what's real, it's what you believe, and it's not what other people believe, and follow your heart. And I believe in love, and that's what helps feed Ares. I love this movie. I love the story. I love the CGI. I love the visual effects. I love the action. That No Man's Land scene is top 10 action movie. Top 10 action scene in a comic movie for me. Third act, not as great as the other two, especially when Ares shows up, but I've never gotten the hate for it. I still like Ares. I still think it's a cool third act. I love this movie. It is almost a perfect movie. It was almost my number one, but there's one other that came along. And that one other is Zack Snyder's Justice League. This, to me, is a top 10 greatest comic book movie of all time. It's a movie that deserves the term epic. It's long. It spans hundreds of years in some ways. It's got lots of characters, and it's got development. And it was a film that I never expected to be anywhere near as good as it was, where I thought it would be good, but also flawed, much like Batman vs. Superman. And what I got was just a perfect movie to me, where you get every character gets their arc fulfilled in some way. Cyborg, the worst character in the Justice League film, is the best character in this film, where he goes through this full arc of he doesn't want these powers, he hates his father, then he begins to realize this is a gift, this is what I was born to be. I love that. I love the Barry's arc of realizing he's not that he's not a mistake. I love Aquaman. He gets less of an arc here, but kind of setting up Justice League a bit more, and Aquaman a bit more of he needs to be king. I love Wonder Woman in this film, but Batman gets the best arc, where he learns to be a hero again, and he learns to, in some ways, he forgives Superman, and he realizes why Superman really is a hero. Speaking of Superman, he's awesome in this movie. When he comes back, it's just one of the most crowd-pleasing moments ever. I would have loved to see that moment in the theater where he finally comes back and he says, not impressed, and then just destroys Steppenwolf. And to me, it shows that just everything in this film that they did originally was better than the original film. I love this movie. I don't know why. If you can't get through the 4 hours, I get it, but this is a movie where I have no complaints about it. People have tried to tell me it's the same movie, just longer. It's a completely different film. It's not Justice League. This is a true epic vision from a visionary and auteur filmmaker, and I love it. It is a top 10 comic movie of all time. it is one of my favorite DC films of all time. It's my third favorite DC film of all time. And, you know, it would have been really nice to see this universe go in this direction, but even though we couldn't, I'm satisfied enough with this film. And to me, it's perfect. There's nothing I would ever complain about it because I do not have any complaints about it. And my number one is Zack Snyder's Justice League. Well, if you've made it to the end of this video, thank you. All I want to say is I've really enjoyed this franchise a lot more than most people. Thank you for watching this very long video. And I want to know what your thoughts are on this franchise, what your ranking is in the movies. And if you want to throw Peacemaker in there as well, go for it. But with all that said, I'll see you on the other side. Bye.